let's switch gears and let's talk about another top 10 matchup in college football, because we already talked Alabama and Tennessee. We talked about everything that was great about that game. Why we love college football. Pomp, circumstance, intrigue, down to the wire, good plays, bad plays, mistakes, final play, field goal, fans rushing the field, tears on the field. That was everything we love in college football. Penn State, Michigan was the exact opposite. Penn State went to Michigan, number 10 in the country. Michigan ranked in the top 5, coming off a Big Ten championship and college football playoff appearance. We thought we were going to get a close game, or at least I did. Instead, we got a butt kicking of epic proportions. Final score in this one, 41-17. And it's going to sound crazy. It could have been a lot worse than it actually was. Michigan could have won by a lot bigger of a margin than they actually did. So let's talk about this, and let's talk about what it means for both programs, Michigan and Penn State. First of all, it's funny, right? Listen, one thing about this show, you can like me, you can dislike me, you can whatever. I own my L's, though. And so while I told you exactly how Tennessee, Alabama was going to go down on Friday's show, I was just 1,000,000,000% wrong on this. But most of it, I came to the wrong, I got the wrong answer, but my logic at least made sense, right? Because think about Penn State coming into this game and think about what Michigan does really well. Michigan is just tough and physical, and they want to run the ball right at you, and they want to limit their sophomore quarterback. And so you looked at this matchup on paper, you said Penn State can give them problems. Penn State has an elite defense. They've always been great on defense under James Franklin. The offense has been up and down, always been great on defense. And this year, the run defense was especially good. So Michigan, a team that wants to run the ball. Michigan, Jim Harbaugh would like to run the ball 70 times and throw the ball 0 if it was completely up to him. So now you're going up against a top 5 rush defense in college football in Penn State. You are facing a Penn State team that is giving up on average 80 yards per game and 2.5 yards per carry across the season. Those are top 5 stats across college football, period. SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, whatever. On top of that, Penn State is coming off of a bye, which you know how I feel about buys. I think it's important. I think it's always important to look at the calendar. Penn State's coming in refreshed. They have the exact kind of personnel that's supposed to give Michigan fits. Yeah, that did not happen at all. You want to know how bad Michigan, listen, this was just one of the all-time butt kickings that I've ever seen, okay? So here is how bad Michigan beat Penn State on Saturday, okay? I just told you a minute ago. Penn State, was giving up an average of 80 yards per game rushing and 2.5 yards per carry. Michigan in this game had 418 yards rushing, and they also had 7.5 yards per carry, 7.6 yards per carry to be exact. This is the stat that blows me away, okay? Penn State was giving up an average of 80 yards per game on the ground. Michigan had not one, but 2 players who doubled that total. Blake Corum, their potential Heisman Trophy candidate, he finished this game with, on the ground, a total of 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, his teammate, Donovan Edwards, a little ho-hum, 173 yards, 10.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns as well. So a Penn State team that was giving up 80 yards total rushing per game gave up 166 to Blake Corum and 173 more to Donovan Edwards. This was domination. And as I said, that 41-17 final score, it could have been much worse. Michigan's first 5 possessions, how about this? Their first 5 possessions in the first half, they were held to 1 touchdown, 3 field goals, and they had a weird play where J.J. McCarthy, the Michigan quarterback, dropped back, threw a pass. It hit off of a Penn State player, then off of another player's helmet into the hands of a different player who returned it for a touchdown. So if you just take out that one single play, it's a 41-10 win. And if 1 or 2 of those field goals becomes touchdowns in the first half, which it easily could have been, we're talking about a 40-plus point win for Michigan. And so with Michigan, I'll just tell you this. In a wide open college football, so this was a team coming into the year I think me, like everybody else, well, they're going to take a step back. They won the Big Ten last year. It was historic. Everything broke right. Got Ohio State at home. Ohio State, whatever. Ohio State's defense was down, this, that, the other thing. Everything broke right. Now you lose Aiden Hutchinson, number 2 overall pick to the Detroit Lions. Now you lose Dax Hill, first-round pick in the NFL draft at safety. You lose David Ajabo, an elite edge rusher. You lose so much. Hassan Haskins, who's getting minutes for the Tennessee Titans and carries for the Tennessee Titans. There is no way you can replicate what you did last year. It was a good season, Michigan. Hope you had fun, but it ain't going to happen again. Well, fast forward to 7 games into the 2022 season, and here's my question. Why isn't Michigan able to do everything they did last year and more? I think this team can beat Ohio State. I think this team can win the Big Ten. I think this team can go to the college football playoff, and I think they could potentially win a game or two there. I know you think I'm crazy, but let me explain why. First of all, what I can definitively say, I don't know if Michigan is better than last year, but I do think it's important to note they are playing with more confidence, because if you go back to last year with Michigan, I think it's easy to forget this now. I think we were all doubting Michigan all season long. Remember, they were coming off that disastrous COVID year, 2-4 overall. We were all doubting Michigan all season long. We were all questioning if it was going to work, if it could work. And I think even in that locker room, they were questioning it themselves. This was not a team that was steamrolling everybody the way they are this year. Remember last year, 3-point win at Nebraska. They actually played Wisconsin early in the year. That game was going into the fourth quarter very close. They blew it open late. But 3-point win at Nebraska, loss at Michigan State. And then when they played the same Penn State team, they needed kind of a broken play. Lucky's not the right word, but they needed a broken play to punch home the game-winning score. They won by 4 at Penn State. So this was not a team that really gained confidence until they beat Ohio State. Then they obviously crushed Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, and they go to the college football playoff. This year, they're 7-0. All 7 wins are by double figures. The only one that was even sort of close was Iowa at Iowa. Great defense by Iowa, and they still won by 13. So one, they're certainly playing with more confidence. They're just better at this point in the season than they were at this point last year. 2, I do think the quarterback matters, right? And I'll say this. Listen, I don't think I've been critical of their new quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, but remember, they've been trying to figure out, okay, who's our guy? Is it the Cade McNamara guy who was the returning quarterback, or is it this young hotshot J.J. McNamara or J.J. McCarthy? And I had questions and I had debates, and we still haven't really seen him have to take over a game. But what we have seen is there are times where the play breaks down and he can make plays with his legs. I talked about all the rushing yards Michigan had the other day. He himself had 57 yards rushing. Basically, Penn State gave up 80 a game. This guy had almost 60 by himself, and a couple big plays where he just made plays that nobody else could. And so you can see that he adds a dimension to this team. And what I would also say on top of that is I do think there's this notion, Michigan just isn't athletic enough, and wait till they play the SEC. And listen, if they play Georgia, they could lose to Georgia again. I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend and fake it. Georgia's really good. They make a lot of teams look bad. But I look at this Michigan team. I think they're the most athletic that they've been under Jim Harbaugh. Joel Klatt said that during the game. You look at some of the guys they got. Donovan Edwards, that running back, is awesome. He could play anywhere. Blake Corum could play anywhere. Some of their wide receivers, Ronnie Bell, they could play anywhere. So I think the quarterback play is different but better. I think the athleticism is better. But I still think at the end of the day, it comes down to, I just don't know who's going to stop them doing exactly what they do, at least in Big Ten play. Again, you get to a playoff, you play Georgia, you play Alabama, it might be a little bit different. Maybe even Clemson with the defensive front that they have. But you play those teams, it could get really, really, really ugly for just about everybody else. And I look at this Michigan schedule. Tell me who you're worried about as Michigan goes into their bye week. They're facing a Michigan State team on 2 weeks from now. Michigan State themselves gets a bye. Michigan State's bad. Now, to their credit, they bounced back against Wisconsin on Saturday. And maybe Michigan State turned a corner there, but we've seen nothing to make us think that Michigan State is the team that's going to beat Michigan for a third straight year, which I do think is important. Michigan is not going to overlook Michigan State having lost to them 2 years in a row. Then Michigan plays Rutgers. They play Nebraska, which is improved. Those are their first 3 games after their bye. They should be 10-0 going into their final 2. And you want to hear something funny? You know who Michigan's toughest game is throughout the rest of the year? I would argue prior to Ohio State, it's probably they play Illinois. You talk about a game that looked like a layup in September. Illinois is 3-1, tied with Purdue, atop or 6-1, 3-1 in the Big Ten West, atop the Big Ten West standings. Illinois is one of the best stories of college football. If it wasn't for Josh Heupel, Brett Bielema would be your national coach of the year. And then they play Ohio State. And Ohio State's awesome, and Ohio State's incredible, but they do kind of have the blueprint to beat them. And until Ohio State can line up player for player and do what they couldn't do last year, I think there's going to be almost like the same way I said Michigan had to gain confidence throughout the season. It's going to be kind of the same with Ohio State. I'm not saying that on a new, in Columbus, I would pick Michigan right now, but could you see the scenario where they win? And then if they get to the playoff, and even, by the way, they can lose to Ohio State, and the way things are going, they can still get to the playoff. I mean, Bama's one loss away from basically being eliminated. The Pac-12 is basically down to UCLA. The ACC is probably going to be Clemson. I don't think Georgia's unbeatable. I don't think Tennessee is unbeatable as good as they look right now. So I think Michigan could get to the college football playoff even if they lose to Ohio State. But you look at this season, this thing is wide open. Same way we're talking about Tennessee maybe making a playoff run. Same way we're talking about Clemson. We were talking about USC up until last night. Why can't Michigan? Why can't Michigan get there? You don't think that this Georgia team that's not as good as last year they can't compete with? I'm not saying they beat them. I'm just saying you can't compete with them. Alabama, the team that has a million penalties if they get there. Tennessee, I don't know. So what I am saying is this. I don't know if this Michigan team is better. What I will tell you is they're playing with more confidence. I think they're more well-rounded. I like the quarterback. This team is dangerous, man. This team is dangerous. If I had a poll right now, I'll tell you, I would probably have Tennessee 1. I'd probably have Ohio State 2, and I'd probably have Michigan 3 after that game. It was a butt-kicking of epic proportions. I think the best is yet to come for Michigan. I think the best is yet to come for Jim Harbaugh.